The galaxy was burning. Across the stars, fleets of once proud civilizations had fallen silent.
Else.
Signals that once spoke of trade, music, and culture now carried only distress calls.
Oh.
Where there had been unity, there was only fear. And in the middle of it all, one truth repeated itself across every dying world: the enemy could not be stopped. The Coalition, a great alliance of dozens of species, had gathered the largest armada ever built. Thousands of warships, countless weapons, and the brightest commanders stood together. They thought they were ready for war. They thought numbers and technology would be enough. But when the enemy came, the galaxy learned how wrong they were. The first clash lasted only hours. A swarm of black ships, sharp and endless, tore through the Coalition's front line. Their weapons sliced through shields as if they were paper. Entire fleets broke apart. Veterans who had fought for centuries whispered one phrase as their ships burned: "We are doomed." On the flagship of the Coalition, Admiral Kareth of the Thaleri watched his fleet collapse. He had seen war before, but never like this. Every strategy failed. Every counterattack ended in silence. His claws tapped the armrest of his command chair as reports streamed in. "Admiral, the Third Fleet has been annihilated. Admiral, the Yaren homeworld is gone. Admiral, we cannot hold." He wanted to believe there was hope, but hope had died with the first ships that fell. The enemy was not just winning, they were erasing civilizations. Entire star systems blinked out of existence. Around him, officers shouted in panic, their voices overlapping. Some begged retreat. Others demanded to fight to the last ship. But deep inside, Kareth already knew the truth. The battle ended. The war was lost. Yet, in the chaos, one voice spoke quietly. It was the communication officer, her hands shaking as she read from the console. "There is a signal." Kareth turned his eyes to her. "From where?" "The fleet is destroyed." Her mandibles clicked nervously. "It is not from our fleet. It is not Coalition. It is human." The command bridge fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Humanity, the Deathworlders, the unpredictable, the reckless species. The Coalition had avoided calling them into this war. It's too dangerous, too uncontrollable. They fought like no other, and they frightened allies as much as enemies. But now, when all else had failed, their signal had come. "Put it through," Kareth ordered. The screen flickered and a face appeared. It was human, scarred and calm. His eyes carried no fear, only focus. "This is Admiral Vance of the Terran Defense Command," the voice said. "We received your distress call. Hold your line for one more hour. Reinforcements are coming." Kareth's officers stared in disbelief. Reinforcements? The humans had no great fleets, no massive war machines left, at least not that anyone knew of. They were a small power on the edge of the galaxy. What could they possibly bring that the Coalition had not already tried? The human's voice cut. Through their doubts, do not surrender. Do not scatter. Survive. That is all you need to do. Humanity will take it from there. The transmission ended. Silence fell again. Officers exchanged glances, disbelief heavy in their eyes. One finally spoke. "Admiral, they cannot be serious. The humans. Against this enemy." Kareth did not answer at once. He thought of the stories. The humans were not like other species. Where others bent, they broke through. Where others counted losses, humans counted victories. Their history was filled with wars they should not have survived, that they always did. But even with that knowledge, Kareth could not imagine what they could possibly send. Minutes turned into an eternity as the Coalition fleet struggled to survive. Ship after ship was torn apart. The enemy pressed closer, black holes shining like blades in the dark. The Coalition was moments from collapse. Then, space itself seemed to tremble. From the far edge of the system, new signatures appeared on sensors. Hundreds, then thousands. Vast shapes moving in formation, cutting through the void with precision. Kareth's eyes widened. It was not a fleet. It was an armada, and at its heart, a ship larger than any he had ever seen, bristling with weapons that looked ancient and new. At the same time, Its hull bore the mark of a wolf, painted white against the black. A voice carried across every channel, clear and commanding. "This is the Terran fleet. Enemy contact confirmed. All coalition vessels, fall back and regroup. We will handle this." On the bridge of the coalition flagship, no one moved. The officers simply stared as the human ships advanced, silent, deadly, unstoppable. For the first time in days, Admiral Kareth felt something stir inside him. It was hope. The void lit up with fire. Admiral Kareth had seen fleets before Grand. Armadas stretching across the stars, warships polished like jewels of their empires. But nothing compared to what had just arrived. The Terran fleet was different. Their ships were not graceful or beautiful. They looked like predators, angular, armored, built for survival. Their hulls were scarred with old battles, yet reinforced, with layers of strange plating no one in the coalition recognized. Each vessel seemed less like a machine and more like a weapon forged with one purpose: destruction. The enemy swarmed toward them, countless black ships moving as one. They had crushed every other defense in their path. But the humans did not scatter. They advanced. The first Terran volley erupted. Beams of white light and kinetic rounds, fired at near impossible speed, tore through the void where they struck. Enemy ships didn't just break apart, they vanished. Armor melted, hulls ripped open, and entire formations of the Black Fleet disintegrated. Coalition officers gasped. Their best weapons had barely scratched the enemy. But the humans had just destroyed dozens in seconds. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Vance stood calm, watching the storm unfold. His voice was cold and precise as he gave orders. Squadrons. Alpha through Delta, cut their left flank. Echelon formation, fire at will. The human fleet moved like a single creature. Hundreds of ships aligned, their guns spitting death into the swarm. Each volley tore holes wider and wider into the enemies. Advance. But the black ships were relentless. They closed in, their strange weapons igniting the dark. Beams of energy, sharp and unnatural, lashed out. One Terran destroyer was struck. Its shields flared, buckled, and failed. Fire erupted across its hull as it broke apart. For a brief moment, the coalition officers thought even the humans might fall the same way they had. But then they saw something terrifying. The Terran fleet did not panic. They did not scatter. Instead, the other ships shifted instantly, filling the gap, weapons flaring brighter. And as the destroyer's broken hull drifted, it exploded not in silence, but with a calculated detonation that destroyed 6 enemy ships around it. Losses are fuel, Admiral Vance said, his voice carried across comms. Every sacrifice takes more of them. Push forward. Kareth's claws tightened on his chair. He realized something dreadful. The humans did not fight to survive. They fought to win. The black swarm pressed harder, trying to overwhelm by sheer numbers. But for every human ship that fell, twice as many enemy vessels were destroyed. The Terran armada fought with brutal precision. Railguns fired massive slugs that punched through several ships at once. Plasma batteries cut swaths of fire through enemy ranks. Strange weapons coils of energy that seemed to bend space itself ripped holes straight through squadrons, and then flagship moved. The great Terran warship at the center of the fleet advanced slowly, like a titan waking from slumber. Enemy ships hurled themselves at it, but its shields blazed with impossible strength. Every weapon on its massive hull ignited at once. The result was not battle. It was annihilation. Hundreds of black ships vanished in the opening volley. Higher. Formations dissolved into ash. Flagship's guns did not fire randomly, they cut patterns through the enemy. Carving lanes for smaller Terran ships to dive through on the coalition bridge, officers watched with wide eyes. One whispered what many were thinking. They are not fighting like us. They are fighting like the enemy, but better. Admiral Kareth said nothing. He watched the human fleet advance, carving into the swarm that had destroyed the galaxy's greatest armies. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and awe. The humans had not come to defend. They had come to kill. And then, something happened that froze him where he sat. The enemy began to retreat. For the first time in the war, the Black Swarm pulled back. Not far only a shift in formation, regrouping on the system's edge. It was enough. Enough to show fear. The humans did not chase. Admiral Vance's voice echoed across the channels once more, calm and certain. Coalition fleet, fall back and repair. This battle is not finished. They are testing us. And now, they know what waits for them. On his own bridge, Admiral Kareth felt the weight of those words. Humanity had not just saved them from destruction, it had done what no one thought possible, forced the unstoppable enemy to hesitate. The galaxy had thought the battle was lost. But now, as the humans advanced into the dark, Kareth realized something terrifying. The real war had only just begun. The battlefield was quiet, too quiet. The Black Swarm had pulled back, hanging at the edge of the star system like a shadow that refused to leave. They did not retreat fully. They circled, waiting, as if studying their new opponent. On the Coalition, flagship Admiral Kareth watched the human fleet with unease. The Terrans had saved them, yes. They'd shown power no one thought possible. But Kareth could not shake the feeling that there was something hidden behind their cold precision. He turned to his comms officer. Open a secure channel to the human flagship. Moments later, the scarred face of Admiral Vance appeared on the screen. His eyes were sharp, his voice calm. You survived, Vance said simply. Kareth's mandibles clicked nervously. Because of you, the enemy has never been pushed back before. And Admiral, how? What do your people possess that the rest of us do not? For a moment, Vance said nothing. Then, slowly, he leaned forward. We have fought monsters before. Kareth blinked. Monsters? Vance's eyes darkened. Not like yours. Worse, on Earth, survival was never guaranteed. Every predator was stronger, faster, deadlier. Our ancestors lived by one law: adapt or die. We learned not just to fight, but to study. Every enemy teaches us something, and once we learn, we'll never forget. Kareth felt his chest tighten. The humans did not see war as horror. They saw it as knowledge. But before he could ask more, alarms blared across the fleet. The enemy was moving again. The swarms surged forward, larger than before, reinforced by ships that seemed to crawl out. Of the void itself, their numbers doubled, then tripled, until the stars were blotted out. Coalition officers panicked. We cannot hold against that. They will crush us this time. But the humans did not flinch. On his flagship, Admiral Vance stood tall. Activate Protocol Nemesis. Kareth's translator struggled with the word nemesis, a concept of vengeance, of inevitable punishment, and then he saw it. From deep within the Terran fleet, massive structures began to unfold. At first, Kareth thought they were ships, but no, they were something else. Weapons unlike anything he had ever imagined. Gigantic towers of metal and energy carried hidden within the armada. Now awakening, the structures hummed, their cores glowing brighter than stars. Energy arced between them, forming a vast web across space. The enemy swarmed forward, but the humans were ready. Fire, Vance commanded. The web ignited. A wave of energy swept across the battlefield. Not like a beam or a missile, but like a storm. It passed through the black ship sand. Wherever it touched, their strange weapons faltered. Shields collapsed. Engines flickered. Their perfect coordination broke apart in an instant. For the first time, the enemy looked vulnerable. Terran. Ships pounced, ripping through disabled formations with merciless precision. Railguns shattered hulls. Plasma fire burned through armor. The once unbeatable swarm screamed into silence. Kareth's officers stared in shock. What? What is that weapon? Vance answered, his voice like stone. They rely on a shared field, a hive of energy that connects every ship. We cracked its frequency. We built Nemesis to turn their strength into weakness. Where they are many, we make them nothing. Gareth's breath caught. The Coalition had studied the enemy for years, but no one had uncovered this. How had the humans done it so quickly? He looked again at Vance and the truth sank in. The humans had been preparing long before this war had reached them. They had been watching, waiting. On the battlefield, the swarm fell apart under the Terran assault. Thousands of black ships burned, their destruction lighting the void. But still, more came. Even weakened, they were endless. Kareth whispered, almost to himself, "How many of them are there?" Admiral Vance did not look away from the battle. His expression remained calm, but his words were grim. "As many as the galaxy has stars. But numbers mean nothing now. They've met Deathworlders. They've met us." The storm of fire continued. Human ships cut deeper and deeper into the swarm, each strike more merciless than the last. The galaxy's deadliest fleet had revealed. Its hand, the enemy was bleeding. But as the battle raged, something strange happened, far beyond the system. Past even the swarm's retreating edges, a new signal flickered in the void. Not enemy, not human. Something else. On the Coalition bridge, sensors screamed with warnings. Kareth's voice trembled. Another fleet? From where? Admiral Vance finally turned his head, his eyes narrowing. "They've called reinforcements," he said. "We've only just begun." The battlefield had turned into a graveyard of broken ships. Thousands of enemy vessels burned in silence, drifting wrecks scattered like bones across the stars. The Coalition watched in disbelief. They had seen annihilation before, but always their own, never the enemy's. For a moment, hope felt real. For a moment, it seemed the humans had done the impossible. Then the new signal came at first. It was feigned a ripple on long-range sensors. Then it grew larger and larger, until even the naked eye could see the distortion across space. One by one, vast shapes emerged from the void. The swarm had called reinforcements. They were not like the others. These ships were colossal leviathans. Of black steel, bristling with weapons the size of cities, their hulls pulsed with living light, as if the metal itself was alive. The smaller swarm ships swirled around them like insects around titans. The sight froze the Coalition in terror, by the stars. One officer whispered on Kareth's bridge, That is not a fleet. That is an empire." Panic spread across the Coalition ships. Many captains begged to retreat, their voices breaking with fear. They had barely survived the smaller swarm. This new arrival felt like death itself, but on the Terran flagship, there was no panic. Only silence, broken by Admiral Vance's calm. "Voice formation Omega. Prepare the Black Wolves." The words carried across the fleet, short and sharp. Every human officer moved instantly, as if the order had been drilled into their bones. The human armada shifted position, forming a wide crescent. Admiral Kareth leaned forward, claws gripping the armrest. "What are you doing?" Vance's scarred face turned toward the screen. His voice was cold. "When a predator is too large, to fight head-on, you bleed it. Slowly, then you tear it apart." The Coalition officers exchanged nervous glances. Was that truly possible against something this size? The enemy Leviathans advanced, their weapons igniting the void. Beams of black fire cut across space, shattering asteroids and tearing through what remained of the Coalition's crippled escorts. The humans did not move to block them. Instead, something else happened. From the shadows of the fleet, smaller, Terran ships broke away. Sleek predatory craft painted black, almost invisible against the dark. They moved without lights, without sound ghosts among the stars. The Black Wolves. They slipped past the front lines, weaving through the swarm unnoticed. No grand volleys, no loud declarations. They simply vanished into the dark, hunting silently. The enemy Leviathans pressed forward, turning their weapons toward the human fleet. But just as their cannons prepared to fire, one of the Titans shuddered. A streak of white fire erupted from within its hull. Then another. Then another. The Coalition watched in shock as the giant cracked open, fire pouring from inside. It had not been destroyed from without. It had been killed from within. Admiral Vance's voice came through the coms. "Never chase the wolves. You'll never catch them." More explosions blossomed across the Leviathans. The black wolves had infiltrated them, boarding and planting charges deep in their cores. Each detonation ripped holes in the beasts, spilling fragments of molten armor into space. The swarm tried to respond, but chaos spread quickly. Their formations broke as they tried to protect the larger ships. That was when the main Terran fleet struck. The crescent formation tightened, guns unleashing synchronized fire. It was not random chaos. It was a calculated storm. Railguns hammered at weak points. Plasma lances sliced across engines. Missiles, black-tipped and razor-fast, found openings carved by the wolves. The void became a slaughterhouse. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Kareth could not look away. He had thought the humans were saviors. Now, watching them hunt with such precision, he saw something else. They were not saviors. They were predators unleashed. This is not war, one of his officers whispered. This is extermination. Kareth said nothing, but in his heart he knew the truth. Humanity was not fighting to protect the Coalition. They were fighting to end the enemy completely. One of the enemy Leviathans exploded, its death lighting up the system like a second sun. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield. The smaller swarm ships scattered, their perfect coordination gone, but the humans did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They pressed forward, relentless, like wolves finishing the kill. Yet, even as victory seemed near, new readings flared on the sensors. The enemy Leviathans were not alone. Behind them, beyond the edge of space, something even larger stirred. The screen filled with distortion. Energy readings spiked beyond measure. Something was waking, shape so vast it eclipsed the stars. Kareth's voice broke in fear. What? What is that? Admiral Vance stood silently, his expression unreadable. Then, finally he spoke. That, he said, is their command ship. And it's coming for us. The void trembled. At first, Admiral Kareth thought it was his failing senses. But no, it was real. The entire system shook as the enemy command ship emerged from the abyss. It was not a ship, not truly. It was a moving fortress, the size of a small moon, its hull carved from black stone and metal that pulsed like living flesh. Great spires rose from its surface, each bristling with weapons large enough to shatter planets. Its core burned like a dying star, red veins of energy bleeding across its skin. Coalition officers froze at the sight. Many could not speak. Others whispered prayers. One voice cracked through the silence. There is no defeating that. It is death itself.
The swarm gathered around the beast like servants bowing to their master.
Where the other Leviathans had been titans, this was a god. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Vance stared at the monstrosity with a grim face. He did not look surprised. He had expected this. Signal all ships, Vance ordered. Phase 2 begins. Unlock the Harbinger. Those words sent a ripple of unease across the Coalition bridge. Kareth leaned forward. What? What is the Harbinger? Vance's eyes narrowed. Our last weapon, the one we swore we'd never use. Kareth's claws tightened. Why? Because Vance said coldly, it does not save worlds. Ends them. Before Kareth could ask more, the enemy command ship moved. Its spires lit up, and the first volley erupted. Beams of black energy screamed across the void, tearing straight through human battleships. 3 Terran cruisers vanished, instantly reduced to drifting ash. The shockwaves battered the fleet, forcing even the massive flagship to tremble. The Coalition fleet panicked. Retreat. We must retreat. But the humans held the line. Shield wall, Vance roared. The Terran fleet shifted instantly, warships locking into formation. Energy barriers overlapped, layers upon layers, creating a wall of light. The enemy beams slammed into it, cracking it, but not breaking it. The humans held firm, guns blazing back into the swarm. Still, the command ship pressed forward. Its weapons tore space itself, its sheer mass pulling smaller ships into its gravity. Even the human fleet, for all its strength, was being pushed back. Then, from the Terran flagship, something stirred. A section of its massive hull split apart, revealing a hidden structure within. first, Kareth thought it was another weapon. Battery. But no, this was different. A long, sleek barrel extended outward, surrounded by glowing rings of energy. Strange symbols, human symbols, were etched into its metal. The weapon seemed alive, humming with a deep sound that vibrated through the void. The Harbinger Coalition officers stared in horror and awe. That is not a weapon. A monster. Admiral Vance's voice carried across every channel. His tone was steady, but heavy. All ships, clear firing line. Coalition fleet, pull back. Do not interfere. The Harbinger requires room. Kareth felt his blood run cold. Admiral, what does it do? Vance finally turned to him, his scarred face lit by the weapon's glow. It kills gods. The Harbinger charged. Rings of energy spun faster and faster, sparks leaping between them. The barrel glowed white-hot, space itself bending around. Its core. The sheer power made sensors scream in protest. Even the enemy command ship seemed to hesitate, its swarm faltering. Then it fired. Not a beam, not a missile. Something else. A lance of compressed matter and energy ripped across the battlefield, moving faster than light could follow. It struck the command ship with a force that shook the system. The impact tore through its shields, punching deep into its black flesh. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, and then the monster screamed. The sound was not heard through ears, but through minds. Every ship, every officer, every soldier felt it, the psychic wail of something ancient and terrible in pain. The Coalition. Crews clutched their heads, some collapsing to the floor. Even hardened veterans trembled. The command ship reeled, its spires sparking, its black hull splitting. But it did not die. Instead, it turned its massive bulk toward the Terran flagship, and it roared back. Its core flared red, brighter than a sun. Dozens of spires focused into one colossal beam. The weapon fired, a river of death aimed directly. At the humans, the Harbinger fired again, the two forces colliding in the void. The clash tore reality apart. Space twisted, light bent, and for a moment, it seemed as if the entire system would collapse into nothingness. On the Coalition bridge, Admiral Kareth clung to his chair, eyes wide. He realized what he was witnessing was not just a battle. Was something worse? This was extinction. Fought on a scale no mind could endure, and as the human fleet held firm, Vance's voice came again, steady, unyielding. We warned the galaxy never to wake us. Now, they will learn why. The void was broken. For long minutes, nothing moved. The clash of the Harbingers shot against the command ship's beam had ripped the battlefield apart. Asteroids shattered. Stars flickered as if choking. Even the Coalition's instruments failed. Overwhelmed by the storm of energy that had torn reality itself, when the light finally dimmed, the silence was worse than the noise. Admiral Kareth forced his blurred vision to focus on the main display. The enemy command ship floated in the distance, its monstrous body cracked and smoking. Great wounds bled red fire across its hull. Entire spires had been torn away, but it was not destroyed. The monster still lived. Kareth's mandibles clicked, in despair. Impossible. Nothing survives that. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Vance stood unmoved. His face was lit by the dying glow of the Harbinger. Around him, officers worked in silence, their movements precise, almost mechanical, yet even they could not hide the toll. Entire sections of the human fleet were gone. Dozens of warships had been caught in the crossfire, reduced to drifting wreckage. Many more burned silently, crippled, but refusing to abandon their posts. The Coalition fleet fared no better. Half their remaining escorts were ashdot. The Harbinger itself smoked, its barrel fractured, its glowing rings cracked. No weapon in the galaxy could, but the price was staggering. Status, Vance demanded. His tactical officer's voice was grim. Fleet strength reduced by 30%. The Harbinger is offline. Recoil damage across the flagship's core. Cannot fire again without consequences. Kareth narrowed his eyes. Consequences? The officer did not look at him. Instead, Vance answered, If we attempt another shot, the flagship will not survive. Silence fell. The coalition officers stared in disbelief. They had watched the humans unleash the strongest weapon ever seen in Nand. Now it could not be used again. The enemy swarm, though scattered, began to reform. The Leviathans circled their wounded master, shielding it as it pulsed with recovering energy. Slowly, terribly, the command ship began to turn, spires glowing faintly once more. "They're not retreating," one officer whispered. "There." Recovering, Kareth's claws dug into his chair. This cannot be won, but Vance did not flinch. His scarred face remained calm, his eyes sharp. This battle is not about winning. Not yet. It is about surviving long enough for the enemy to know what they are facing. Kareth stared at him. "You call this surviving? Your people are bleeding ships. The coalition is shattered. And that thing is still alive." For the first time, Vance turned to look directly at him. His voice was low, unyielding. "Admiral, you have not understood. We came here knowing we would bleed. We came here expecting losses. Because every drop of blood buys us knowledge. And knowledge is the only way to kill them." Kareth's breath caught. He realized the humans had not expected to win this fight. They had come to study it. Across the battlefield, the swarm hesitated. The command ship did not advance. Its weapons flickered, but did not fire. For reasons none could explain, it was holding back, as if measuring its foe. On the Terran flagship, reports poured in from across the galaxy. Distress calls, desperate pleas from worlds falling to the swarm. The coalition had placed all hope on this battle, and with its outcome unclear, despair began to spread again. But the humans did not despair. Instead, Admiral Vance opened a fleet-wide transmission. His voice carried into every ship, coalition and Terran alike. "This is not defeat. This is proof. The enemy can bleed. Their command ship can be wounded, their swarm can be broken. They are not gods. They are prey." His words spread like fire. Coalition crews who had nearly given up looked again at their screens, hearts stirring. For the first time, the idea that the enemy was not invincible felt real. But Kareth noticed something else in Vance's eyes. A darkness. A determination colder than survival. Admiral Kareth said softly, "What will you do next?" Gaze hardened. "We leave this system. Not because we are beaten, but because it is time to prepare. We have shown them our teeth. Next time we will show them our claws. And when we return..." He let the silence stretch, the weight of his words filling the void. "We will bring more than fleets. We will bring extinction." The humans began to withdraw, their ships moving with precision despite their wounds. The swarm did not chase. They simply watched, their titanic command ship pulsing with silent fury. As the Terran fleet vanished into jump space, the galaxy shuddered with a new truth. Humanity had entered the war. And though battered, though bloodied, they had not fallen. The deadliest fleet in the stars had survived, and survival was only the beginning. The war burned across the stars like fire eating dry wood. Everywhere the galaxy looked, fleets clashed, planets shook, and the silence of space filled with explosions. But in the middle of this chaos, humanity's deadliest fleet kept advancing. Ship after ship cut through enemy lines, breaking every formation, ignoring every trap. Admiral Hayes stood on the command deck of the Titan's Wrath. His face was tired but sharp. He had seen battles before, he had lost friends, but never had he commanded something like this. Humanity had sent its strongest: carriers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, and the ancient Leviathan-class warship ships that the galaxy thought only existed in whispers and rumors. The enemy armada regrouped again. Thousands of ships turned their weapons toward the human fleet. Plasma cannons lit up the void. Beams of energy shot across the battlefield. For a moment, the stars disappeared under fire. Shields holding the officer beside Hayes reported. His voice shook, not from fear, but from disbelief. "They hit us with everything, and we're still here." Hayes only gave a short nod. The fleet moved as one, precise and deadly. Human warships did not break formation. They did not scatter. They advanced, slow and unstoppable, like a wall of iron crushing glass. On the other side of the battlefield, the alien commanders panicked. Their soldiers had never seen this before. In every galactic war, massive fleets eventually collapsed under pressure. Not humans. Their fleet grew more dangerous with each strike. Every ship that was hit adapted. Shields flickered, but then came back stronger. Weapons recharged faster than the enemy thought possible. One alien commander shouted across the comms, his voice full of terror. They do not retreat. They do not even slow down. What are these creatures? But the worst was yet to come. As the battle raged, humanity's fleet began to reveal its hidden strength. Smaller ships opened their hulls, releasing swarms of drones. They were not like normal drones. They moved in silence, in perfect synchronization. They slipped past shields, cutting into enemy ships like knives into flesh. Explosions followed. Whole enemy cruisers were torn apart from the inside. The galaxy had seen drone warfare before, but this was different. This was human design, ruthless, efficient. Every drone was armed with intelligence, making choices, striking weak points without hesitation. Within minutes, hundreds of enemy ships were destroyed. The Armada's numbers still looked large, but the balance was already broken. On the flagship, Hayes watched calmly. "Keep pressure on the flanks," he ordered. "Push them toward the gravity well." His officers obeyed instantly. The plan was clear: trap the enemy fleet near the star's pull, cut off their escape, and burn them out. But then, something new happened. A shadow appeared on the long-range sensors.
Massive, larger than anything yet seen. The enemy had brought out their
Super Weapon. A ship so large it blocked light from the nearby star. It carried weapons strong enough to destroy moons, maybe even small planets. For a moment, even the human officers were silent. The sight of it was terrifying. Hayes narrowed his eyes. It expected this. "So," he muttered, "they finally send their godship." The alien commanders cheered. Across the comms, their voices grew confident again. Now humanity will fall. Now their fleet will burn. The giant ship charged its weapon. Energy gathered at its core, brighter than the sun. Every ship in the battlefield froze, watching. The galaxy held its breath, but Hayes was not afraid. He leaned forward and gave one order: release the Black Spear. Silence followed. Then, from deep inside the human fleet, a single ship detached. It was small compared to the giant alien weapon, but its design was unlike anything else. Sleek, black, and silent. It carried no large weapons, no heavy shields. Instead, it carried something far more dangerous. The Black Spear vanished from sight. Slipping into stealth so perfect even advanced scanners failed, the enemy's super weapon kept charging, unaware. Minutes passed. The giant ship reached full power. The weapon fired. A beam of death, brighter than anything seen before, cut through space toward humanity's fleet. But the beam hit nothing. The human fleet had already shifted, moving faster than the enemy expected, and in that exact moment, the Black Spear appeared inside the giant ship's shadow. It pierced the super weapon like a dagger through armor. Explosions rippled across its hull. Systems failed. The massive weapon turned into a graveyard of fire. And metal, the enemy commanders screamed in disbelief. Their greatest ship was destroyed by one human strike. The balance of the war collapsed completely. On the Titan's wrath, the crew erupted in cheers, but Hayes only stood silent. He knew the war was not over yet. Humanity had won the battle, but he also knew the galaxy would never forgive this. They would fear humanity more than ever before. Fear was a dangerous weapon. In the distance, the last survivors of the enemy fleet fled. Hayes watched them vanish into the dark, his voice calm but heavy. They will come back, stronger. But so will we. And with that, humanity's deadliest fleet prepared for the final stage of the war. The stars burned bright across the void, but the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The war that had consumed thousands of systems was about to end. One side, the combined fleets of dozens of species, battered, broken, and tired. On the other side, the most feared power in the galaxy, the Dominion Armada. Their ships stretched across entire sectors, their weapons sharp and merciless. For months, everyone believed the war was already lost. But then, humanity arrived. Not in small numbers, not in fragile ships, not as survivors begging for mercy. They came in silence, and when their fleet appeared, it changed everything. The deadliest fleet humanity had ever built moved through space like a storm. Titan warships, carriers, destroyers, each armed with weapons no alien had ever seen before. Their hulls were black, their engines burned like white fire, and their silence was heavier than any war cry. They did not announce themselves. They did not negotiate. They simply arrived. The galaxy watched as the first human fleet formed its wall across the stars. At the front stood the warship Nemesis, the largest vessel humanity had ever created. It was said that the ship alone carried enough firepower to erase whole systems. The Dominion laughed when they saw it. They had crushed human colonies before, destroyed human fleets in the past. They believed this was no different. To them, Earth was only a stubborn world, nothing more. They thought humanity could never match the scale of their empire. They were wrong. The first shot fired from the human side was not a simple beam nor a missile. It was something new. The weapon was silent until it struck, but when it hit, entire Dominion ships folded in half and tore apart like paper. The shockwave sent fear through every enemy heart. No shield could stop it. No armor could resist it. The galaxy's other species, who had once abandoned humans, now stared in disbelief. Those who thought humanity weak were forced to see the truth. Humans had been preparing, waiting, building weapons in secret. Their deadliest fleet was not born in desperation. It had been waiting for the right moment. The battle exploded into chaos. Dominion fleets charged, unleashing storms of plasma and energy, but the human ships cut through them with precision. Every movement was planned. Every strike was exact. It was as if humanity had studied the Dominion for years, memorizing every weakness, every blind spot. The Nemesis led the charge. Its main weapon fired again, this time breaking apart a Dominion command ship in a single strike. Across the fleet, alien officers panicked. Orders broke down. The armada that had once ruled the galaxy was beginning to crumble. On the ground, across countless planets, soldiers and civilians listened to the transmissions. The voices of human commanders carried a weight of steel. Hold the line. Humanity is here. The effect was instant. Worlds that had lost all hope began to rise again. Fleets that had been retreating turned back. For the first time in the war, the galaxy believed it could win. The Dominion tried one final attack. They gathered their super dreadnoughts, ships so large they blotted out the stars. The plan was to crush the human fleet in one overwhelming strike, but humanity had prepared for that too. From the dark edge of the battlefield, another formation arrived. The second wave of human ships, hidden until now. Dozens of carriers opened, unleashing swarms of smaller craft, each one carrying weapons powerful enough to tear through dreadnought armor. The Dominion's last hope died in fire. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was already written. One by one, Dominion ships fell silent. Explosions lit the void like dying stars. The armada that had ruled for centuries was shattered in a single day. When the last Dominion flagship tried to escape, the Nemesis locked on. The human commander gave no speech, no warning. One shot ended it. The flagship burned, and with it, the Dominion Empire finally fell. Silence filled the galaxy. The first time in memory, the war was over. But silence did not mean peace. Every alien race now looked toward Earth. The fleet they had just witnessed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. It was not just a force of defense, it was a weapon of domination. Humanity had shown its hand, and now the truth could not be hidden. The galaxy wondered, would humanity stop here, satisfied with saving their allies, or had something far greater awakened? The Nemesis turned slowly in the void, its massive frame casting shadows over broken Dominion wreckage. Words came from its bridge, but the message was clear enough.